I'm just saying it again, same point. Jesus made it clear, the abomination of desolations, because Daniel remembers the only person in the Bible that used that phrase. It's the central event that helps us understand the negative dimensions of the end times. It's the central event. It's the only event Jesus talked about, political, religious event, that signals the end times. The only one that Jesus spoke about directly. Paragraph D. Now there's many implications to this. Because what the abomination of desolation is, just in one sentence, it's the Antichrist putting an image of himself in the temple in Jerusalem. And when he puts an image of himself, a statue, but it's more than a statue, an archaic statue. It's very dynamic image or statue or idol. But I'm imagining it's going to be state-of-the-art technology with supernatural dimensions and demonic power being manifest around it. Don't think of some archaic old statue. When he puts the image of himself in the holy place in the temple, he says to the nations, now worship me or I will kill you. That's what the abomination is. It's the most abominable thing a man will ever do in history, is to put that statue in the holy place and demand the nations to worship at the pain of death, and he'll have the power to back it up. It's the greatest abomination in history. That's why it's called the abomination. Well, there's a lot of implications, because if the Antichrist is going to put a statue or an image of himself in the temple in Jerusalem, number one, paragraph D, Israel has to be a nation, and they have to have jurisdiction over Jerusalem and build a temple in it. You know, for 2,000 years, the nation of Israel did not have a homeland, and they therefore did not have jurisdiction over Jerusalem, so they couldn't put a temple there. They have to rebuild the temple. They have to restart sacrifices in that temple. All of that is implied by the phrase, the abomination of desolation. Because how can the Antichrist put an image in the temple if there's no temple there? Right now there isn't a temple in Jerusalem. It has to be built. But for 2,000 years, this passage really caused a bit of perplexity to Bible teachers and theologians. They go, how could he put a statue in the temple in Jerusalem? They don't even have Jerusalem. They don't have a temple there. It's never going to happen. But beloved, right now, there's a big movement in Israel to build the temple in Jerusalem right now. And it has to be built. And when that temple is built, that's yet another sign that we are moving in that direction quickly. But the beginning of the Great Tribulation is when the Antichrist enters into the temple, puts the statue, and demands the nations to worship him. That's the great abomination that triggers everything. Jesus said, if you live in Judea, which is the area around Jerusalem, get out of town quick, because the Antichrist is pulling his mask off, and he's going to show himself not as a man of peace. When he does that, he's going to show himself as a man of terror and a man of rage and power and cruelty. Leave quickly when you hear news that that man went into the holy temple, the holy place in the Jerusalem. Now, paragraph 1 under D, the big obstacle is there's a Islamic mosque there right now on the place. So somehow, and I mean that's so I don't know what the word is, but it's so dramatic worldwide, because Jerusalem is going to have a temple on the place where there's an Islamic mosque. Now, how's that going to happen? And the narrative that most people embrace that believe in literal end-time prophecy is the Antichrist will show himself as a man of peace. He'll bring peace in the Middle East, and in the negotiation of peace, he will cause the agreement to allow that temple to be there. Now, that's going to be really big, because that mosque in Jerusalem is the third holiest site in Islam. And I go, there is no man without supernatural power that's going to make that change. But the Lord is orchestrating it, and the Antichrist will have demonic powers, but it is God's will. He's going to let it happen, and the nations will be just amazed when Jerusalem gets to build a temple there, or they get to have a functioning temple. We don't know how it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. So that implies, again, the narrative is that he's going to bring peace in the Middle East first, and then he's going to tell the Jewish nation, hey, I'll give you a temple and I'll let you put sacrifices, daily sacrifices like in the days of Moses. And Israel, the religious community of Israel, they will be so excited they'll buy the peace treaty. They'll say, okay, if you'll give us that. But the problem is, after a little bit of time, the Antichrist stops the daily sacrifices, says, no more sacrifices. He's going to break the covenant. He's going to pull his mask off. I'm not a man of peace. I'm a man of war. I'm a cruel man. I'm a beast. You're not going to offer sacrifices to the God of Israel. You're going to worship me or I'm going to kill you. And he's going to make them stop the sacrifices, which means they cannot practice their religion towards the God of Israel in the way they understand it. That's the narrative of what's going on here. Paragraph E. The abomination of desolation is mentioned 8 times in the Bible. Now it's mentioned 4 times by Daniel, the phrase, some form of the phrase. Jesus is quoted 2 times saying the phrase. And then Paul the Apostle and John the Apostle, they don't use the phrase, but they describe the reality of the abomination of desolation without actually using the phrase, the abomination of desolation. Top of page 2. Okay, just to be real simple, and I just want to be as super simple and clear. What is the abomination of desolation? Well, I've already said it 3 or 4 times, but I'm going to do my main gift. My main gift is repetition. Paragraph A, I just want to say it a little bit different so you go, I really got it. The abomination refers to specific deeds, abominable or evil deeds that are done. These deeds are an abomination to God. That's how it gets the term. It's very evil to God. These deeds, these abominable deeds, they lead to desolation, or another word for desolation, they lead to destruction. Destruction of what? Cities, nations, people. There's destruction that is the result of these abominable deeds. Paragraph C. Now, when the Bible describes the abomination of desolation, in the New Testament, the emphasis is the Antichrist putting his image in the temple. So the New Testament mostly develops that idea. The Old Testament, they don't talk about the image in a direct way. The biggest thing the thing that Daniel emphasized most, that the angels told Daniel, it was really the angels giving it to Daniel, is that the sacrifices would be stopped, which means this evil leader who showed himself as a man of peace will take his mask off, show himself as a man of war, a cruel man, and he will stop their religious practices to the God of Israel and demand that they worship him as God and forsake the God of Israel. That's what it means when it says he stops the sacrifices. He's telling them you cannot do religious practices to the God of Israel. You have to now worship only me and disregard him. That's the bottom line point. When the angels told Daniel over and over, this evil man is going to stop the sacrifices. He's going to interrupt the Jewish religious practices and make them illegal. That's what it means by stop the sacrifices. Paragraph D. The abomination, the evil part, will occur 2 ways. Part number 1, the first part of the evil, abominable deeds is the Antichrist is going to demand to be worshiped. He says, I demand it. God says, that's an abomination to me. You demand it. But number 2, the second part of the abomination, millions of people are going to accept it. That's an abomination to God, that the masses accept it. Both of them are 2 aspects of what is abominable or what is evil in God's eyes. Well, paragraph E, the desolation or the destructions, in other words, you could put for desolation, it will occur in 2 ways. Number 1, the Antichrist will cause desolation. Anybody that refuses to worship, he's going to try to destroy them. If a nation refuses, he's going to attack them. If people refuse, he's going to give the mark of the beast and says, I'm going to starve you out, and if I catch you as a criminal of the state, I'll make it illegal. I will have you executed. So he's going to create destruction to anybody. Well, he's going to try to. He's not going to succeed. As I've said before, and it will be really clear when we get to Daniel 11, the Antichrist wants world leadership, but he never gets it. He has influence in every nation, but he does not dominate every nation. Even at the very end, there are nations resisting him. Even in the last weeks and months, there are nations that are resisting him, not because they love Jesus per se. They don't want this evil man, just like nations resisted Adolf Hitler, not because they were just devout. They didn't like Adolf Hitler. And I mean, there will be godly leaders in some of those nations. That's not my point, but my point is this man's evil will be so apparent to many that nations will be resisting him to the end. He never, ever conquers all the nations, because some people have the idea all the nations will be under his dominion. He will be influencing, he will be harassing, he will be trying to dominate every nation, but he won't succeed. So he will cause destruction he will try to cause destruction to whoever refuses to worship him. He will succeed in many places, but not entirely. But number two, the destruction comes another place. It's from God. For the people who do agree to worship the Antichrist, God releases judgment on them. So you get the Antichrist judgment if you say no, and you get God's judgment if you say yes to the Antichrist. This will cause desolation all over around the world. If you say no, the Antichrist is attacking you with great force. If you say yes, God is coming after you with great force. What? This is intense. That's why it's called the abomination that leads to this global destruction. Not that the whole world will be totally destroyed, but the world will be in desolation when it's over. But it's at that time where the great harvest comes to its fullness. I believe the church will be here in power through this time period. I don't believe the popular idea that we're going to be raptured out and watch it from heaven. I believe the church will be in the power of God, in the midst of the battle, the great harvest of the nations, the power of signs and wonders taking place, and the church will be purified and have victory. There'll be a great falling away, but there'll be a great ingathering in the nations with great power. And the church will be purified in this context. People that aren't sincere will say, I'm tired of this Jesus thing. And people that are sincere, they will walk in deep commitment and purity.